when I'm getting to the bag, ayy. Got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast, ayy. Let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Friday, everybody. Excuse me. Got a solo show for you all today. So we're going to break down some articles here. I do have my dry van lane analysis by my friends at DAT. We're going to be breaking that down. And then we're just going to be getting caught up on some of the headlines out there. I know a lot of you guys are probably obviously working very hard with March Madness going on this morning, but we're going to dive right in here on this one. So my friends at DAT, they partnered with me, and we do 3 times a week lane analysis. All right. So this is all viewer submitted. My team gets emails constantly about this. So we do dry van, flatbed, and reefer. And today is going to be a dry van lane out there, you guys. And again, if you want your lane submitted on this, email my team, podcast@thefreightcoach.com. I just need shipping city, delivery city, and trailer type. And again, you can be very vague in your stuff. I don't need exacts or anything like that. The whole point of this, you guys, is to help you identify patterns and get ahead of some of these spikes that are going on out here. And the West Coast has been the main topic of conversation out there, because fuel prices are absolutely through the roof out here and rising. So this lane is Sacramento, California to Phoenix, Arizona, for a dry van. Right now, it looks overall like it's a very stable lane. If you're, but you know, again, I think that as fuel prices continue to stay elevated, and we were breaking this down, earlier this week when Sonny Charmer was on for the reefer lane on Wednesday, and the recording's out there on my YouTube channel if you guys want to go check that one out. He moves that lane often, and he was saying that one is already starting to see tighter capacity and higher rates. And I look at this one in particular, and it's holding steady overall, right? Like if you look at the 1-year average on this one, it's at about $1,700. Right now, it's currently moving at about $1,650 from what I'm seeing out here. But again, if I'm going out there, no matter what, miles is the first thing that I always pay attention to. And I pay attention to that because obviously days of the week that these shipments move vastly affect how much you're going to pay on this stuff. And you want to get ahead of this. If it's a Thursday to Monday, or a Friday to Monday, it's going to be exponentially more expensive than a next day delivery, because it's in that gray area, right? Like general rule of thumb, most guys can get like 550 miles in a day. In their clock, but it kind of falls into that gray area time, because I've had drivers who can do 700 miles overnight, depending on what they got going on. But, again, if I'm looking at this lane, it looks like there's a kind of a peak out here, but it looks about as stable of a lane that we've broken down on this show in quite some time. Like, we've done a lot of work out of Florida with produce season, and that obviously has the produce swing that comes along with this one. And I look at it as this is going to be one of those ones where I would pay attention to. The two things right now is going to be fuel prices and, with the CDLs. All right. Because obviously the state of California, as of lately, has not really been complying with the DOT's request on a lot of things. And, again, once they start doing that, and these inspections start to becoming more and more frequent, which it kind of sounds like they already are to a certain level, I would just pay attention to that, because rates are going to start to increase going into California and out of California. And that's just going to be a dip in capacity that's going on out there. And then on top of it, you add in fuel prices. I think that these are the West Coast, in my opinion, specifically the state of California. All of those outbound lanes are lanes to watch here for tightened capacity and higher fuel prices for as long as this stuff continues to go on in the market. And I want you guys to pay attention to this, right? It does not matter the mode right now, van, reefer, flatbed. It does not matter. Anything moving in and out of the state of California is pretty much going to be set for a rate increase here, from my operator's opinion only. Okay. And it has everything to do with a lot of the fuel prices, like I had mentioned, but also with capacity being affected due to the CDLs and stuff that they have going on in that state. But if you're looking at it from a stability perspective, you guys, this lane is has performed as about as stable as you possibly can out there. Yes, there's always going to be those natural peaks. Think holidays, Labor Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, stuff like that. But it looks like this one is one of those ones where, it's a power lane. All right. Sacramento to Phoenix, that's a power lane of power lanes. There's always going to be capacity for it, but I would always err on the side of caution on what day of the week that it's going. But I would feel very confident in putting a buffer rate in there. Again, I'm not going to tell you guys what to quote, because I don't want to cost any potential money out there. But if I'm looking at this, I would put a buffer margin in this one, just to kind of offset any increases in fuel that we might see come down the pipeline. And again, I want to kind of keep my customers' rates as similar as possible right now, especially with the spot market ones. All right. Some people love to gouge during times of turbulence. I just don't like to play that game, because I want to be an actual partner for my customers. Again, to each their own. But with this one in particular, I would feel fairly confident in adding a little bit of a buffer on there for fuel. Have that fuel conversation with your customer right now. Again, I don't assume people are or your competitors or anybody else is passing them along this information. That's why I always like to get ahead of it. So if you're in that situation right now where you're starting to see your rates creep up on outbound Cali, specifically Sacramento going into Phoenix, I would talk to them about that, because fuel in Arizona is like over $5 a gallon as well. So it's higher in California, but it's also high in Arizona. So again, that's going to naturally see some price increases. So put that fuel buffer in there. But again, with Sacramento to Phoenix, I think from a capacity standpoint, it's going to be one of the last lanes that you're going to see any tightness on in the event any of that happens. But again, I would feel very confident in going out there and locking in some long-term pricing. Again, fuel buffer at that. But again, this is a power lane of power lanes. And, it's one of those ones where I think it's the last one to change out there that you get. But that is how I assess it, you guys. Again, I try and find everything. I look at the pattern recognition. I look to see when are those peak seasons, when are those potential times that my margins might be a little bit compressed due to servicing the account, because I know that eventually capacity will loosen back up and freight will start flowing again in most of these markets. But I would feel very confident in just adding in a fuel buffer on this one and running with it. But that is it for this week in freight, powered by DAT Dry Van Edition. If you guys want your lane broke down on this, again, I don't need anything other than a shipping city, a delivery city, and a trailer type. And again, if you don't want me to know the exact city, just say a city like Sacramento. There's 10,000 shippers in the city of Sacramento. I'm not going through and looking for anything more in depth than that on this one, you guys. We're just here to help you guys understand that there's a lot more stability out there than individuals want you to think. And again, this is just coming from somebody who actually moves freight, actually prospects shippers, and, does the job that I talk about day in and day out on this show. But speaking of the job that I do day in and day out on this show, we are going to be breaking down a couple of articles now. And again, all the links to all the articles are going to be listed in the show notes. And again, I really want you guys to go out there and read these yourselves, but I'm going to summarize a lot of them for you, and we're going to talk about them on the show. First article is going to be from freightwaves.com. This one has been gaining a lot of national attention out there, you guys. And this is Delilah's law that tightens CDL issuance, gets the House committee okay. So I think it's very, very important to interject what this means. All right. So the Transportation Committee passed this one. Transportation and Infrastructure Committee passed this one by a party line vote of 35 to 26. Now this goes to the floor, all right, the Congress, and then it goes to Senate, and then it goes to the president's desk for signature, right? So they're like, there's a lot of time that this could not make it any further. It could die on Congress's desk, excuse me, at the House of Representatives. But this is seemingly one of those ones. I mean, again, if you saw the State of the Union, President Trump brought Delilah and her father, I believe it was, out to the State of the Union to talk about passing this one. And for those of you who don't know, she was injured in a 2024 crash when she was 5 in a collision involving a truck driven by a driver in the U.S. illegally. Representative David Rouser of North Carolina, a Republican, introduced the legislation. The counterpart bill in the Senate was introduced by Senator Jim Banks, a Republican from Indiana. Banks's bill was introduced first and received the endorsement by President Trump. The Senate bill, despite the difference between the House and Senate versions, the main thrust of the pieces of legislation remains the same: to remove drivers whose legal status in the U.S. does not fall under several different approved categories. Again, I think, like, I've talked about this ad nauseum on this show, and I want that to be kind of the barometer moving forward. There's a very key difference between illegal operations and legal operations, okay? And there's a lot of people on social media and the media who are trying to just jumble it all into one giant category because it gets a ton of clicks out there on social media. And then for those of you who don't know, the more clicks and eyeballs you have on content, you can package that up to advertisers and charge a higher rate. So I think that might be why some people do it. But I want to give you guys my like honest, unfiltered opinion on it. And there's two different camps here. All right. There's the people who are willingly and knowingly breaking the law and who shouldn't be behind the wheel. And then there's people who have legal work visas here, who have legal CDLs that have done it right, people are just kind of jumbling them all together. And I think you need to separate that between legal operations and illegal operations. Obviously, English proficiency is at the forefront of this. I think it's, like I said, I've talked about on this show as well. You better be able to read and speak English if you're going to be driving on the freeway in any capacity, let alone a truck. All right, 80,000 pound plus, you should be doing that. And that's why I've also said if illiteracy is the main sticking point, that's why they should just make every single driver with a CDL recertify so they can avoid any and all prejudice. And again, I understand the annoyance factor that would come along with it, but I also look at it from that perspective where it's like, if it's that, it doesn't matter. If you can't read, it doesn't matter where you were born. You shouldn't be driving a truck. All right, plain and simple. You shouldn't be driving a car if you can't read. That's my honest stance on this. Obviously, there's criticism from this. The lead Democrat, Rick Larson of Washington, criticized the speed at which the legislation made its way to the committee. We were unable to be participants in developing the language of this bill. I do hope we get back to regular order. I actually think you shouldn't get back to regular order, Rick, because most of you guys in Congress take 4 years to do anything, and then you're just talking about re-election. We need speed. All right, we need to get stuff done. Like, at what point are our elected officials going to, actually do the job that we elected them to do, as opposed to we need to drag this out? Bureaucracy is a plague. All right, it just kills any and all progress because they always think we need more time. No, you need to work faster. All right. That's why the free market and capitalism is the greatest system, because it forces people to work fast. Otherwise, everything would just die. Let's see. He said that he also said that there's provisions in the bill that are unnecessary. He said English language proficiency requirements is already being implemented by the administration. Every state in the District of Columbia is currently adhering. That's a lie. They're not all adhering to the administration's enforcement guidance. Otherwise, they wouldn't be withholding federal funds from certain states that are not compliant. So again, let's put that out there. And then it also says Larson also criticized the 1 year out of service requirement in the bill for drivers that were found to not be English proficient, saying it's on the same level as drivers who are caught driving drunk. Yeah, I would say your inability to read road signs is an impairment, which also probably falls in line with your ability to be, drunk behind the wheel. I think that it's kind of same in that situation. It's just, you're just arguing different points there. And then on the heels of the new FMCSA regulation, the House action took place 2 days after the implementation of this. And again, if you guys like Matt Leffler, who's been on the show, he put out, I think he might have wrote an article with FreightWaves on this one, but he put a pretty good breakdown of a lot of this as well. You guys, he's a lawyer. He's not your lawyer, but I would definitely look into it because it also, was talking about the non-domiciled issue. And then while the wording between the Senate and House bills is not identical, the definition of non-citizens who could still qualify for a CDL under the parallel pieces of legislation came, in for criticism from Larson. It could be interpreted to shut off any opportunity for a CDL holder who is in the U.S. under DACA, immigrants who were brought to the U.S. illegally as a child and still do not have legal status, or political refugees. The bill blocks off job opportunities for people who are in this country legally and otherwise could meet qualifications to drive commercially. This is not a policy I can justify to the refugees in my district. All folks who live in my district who are trying to make a life while waiting and hoping and praying to get into their, praying that their country of origin gets to a place where they can return. I look at it from, again, maybe just because I went to public school, and I look at it from a very white or black men standpoint. If they have the ability to be here and they have a work visa and they can read and speak English, I didn't see anything in there that stops them from applying to get their CDL. So, all right. And then anyways, key provision in the Senate bill that is not in the House version requires recertification of all CDLs 180 days after the Delilah's law is enacted. Failure to do so would result in a license revocation. The House bill also requires the DOT 18 months after the law goes into effect to issue a final rule regarding the self-certification CDL schools. Yeah, I think that back to the recertification thing of it, and again, with the main sticking points of the bill is all I'm talking about here. They should just make everybody do that within 180 days. I think that's a smart move. It covers all their bases. And again, it removes any and all arguments of prejudice from it, because if you have a CDL, you need to be able to read and speak the language, plain and simple. I think that that's about as clear as they can get. But again, as most of our elected officials love to do, they love to argue a bunch of, anyways, I'm sorry, I don't want to go off here. But, again, I think that, like I said, like the set federal standard and removing any states to allow anybody to, because I just look at it like this. Like, again, I know how the structure of the government is. I'm very much up to speed on how this goes, but I look at it as if you are going to participate in interstate commerce at all, i.e. picking up a load in Arizona and delivering it to California, there should be a set federal standards for CDLs. All right. Like each state shouldn't be able to have different rules for that. All right. I feel like if you're going to be moving on the freeways, state highways, all of that, federal highways, you should have it doesn't matter whether you get your CDL in Washington, Florida, New York, Texas, doesn't matter. Everybody should have the exact same test. It should be one flat set of standards out there. And I think that overall, again, standards are a good thing, as I've said on this show countless times. All right. And then when it comes to like the penalty for this stuff, I am of the mindset that if you actually enforce strict repercussions for people's actions, people tend to not want to make those actions anymore because they don't want to, potentially go to prison for a certain amount of time or get fined a lot and then get arrested and then their wages go. Like, repercussions are a good thing because it rewards the people who aren't breaking the law, right? Again, most people who don't want any of these things want to knowingly skirt the system at the expense of all the people who operate legally and pay their taxes. All right. Like, I look at it no matter what is the standards. We need to raise the standards across the board. And I think this bill is a great starting point. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. There's always something that you could probably find. Let's be real. Most bills that are brought to Congress and Senate are like 8,000 pages. That's a complete makeup on the not all of them are, but the majority of them are. And there's a bunch of provisions that are thrown in there and a bunch of stuff. Nobody actually reads it, but they want to argue about one point or another. So, another thing is we should just make one-page laws, one-page bills that are put out there so everybody is equal to put it. But again, I think Delilah's law as a whole is a great step forward. And again, this is one of those instances where if you want to have your local officials vote against it, call them. All right. Last time I checked, they're supposed to still work for us and they got a phone number listed. Just Google who's my congressman and then their phone number will pop up. It's really easy. I'm in support of it though. But that article, you guys, is from FreightWaves. They put out a couple of them here. This one, the title of this one was Delilah's Law that Titan CDL issuance gets House committee okay. Matt Leffler, armchair attorney, he also wrote one as well. Check that one out, you guys. Read on that one. Second article we're going to break down, though, is overdriveonline.com. Majority of owner ops victims of freight fraud and broker tricks, coming from a survey here. In the midst of the roughest and most prolonged freight market drought in modern history and an ongoing fraud apocalypse, the explosion of fraud since 2021 has reshaped the industries, mangling carrier relationships of layers of vetting, tracking, and intrusive asks, such as requirements to send pictures of the side of the truck or a valid CDL, though each has proven to be not entirely effective. But owner ops might represent a bright spot in the broader freight fraud disaster. Here's what the survey found. Most respondents have experienced some sort of fraud, but it's as slim as majorities get. 49.7% said that they hadn't been a victim, rounded up to 50% in the chart that displays more results. The most common scam was falling victim to a double brokering ring and getting paid, though a reduced amount. Losses from various frauds can amount quickly. 28% of owner-operators who have been scammed reported document hits of $10,000 or more. Excuse me. Experts Overdrive spoke to estimated that problem accounts for 15% of all cargo theft, and that annually as many as 750,000 fake load posts might hit the boards while millions and millions of malicious calls and emails go out hunting. However, freight fraud doesn't encompass. All right, hold on. I'm just going to skim ahead. The most common scam, 28% of respondents said, was simple double brokering, with the second broker actually paying the carrier, but at a reduced amount, pocketing the difference. 23% hauled double brokered freight stiffed by both brokers. 15% said their identity was stolen. 5% diverted during a haul that made me party to cargo theft. And then 7% was fooled by ID thief who had used me to steal a load that made me party to cargo theft. And then 14% have been blackmailed, threatened with reputation damage related to a load. And then a downright scary 14% of respondents have been blackmailed. I carried a third-party load out of Oregon to Laredo, said one respondent. By the time I delivered, the load had been canceled and transferred to another shipper who decided I picked up and delivered because I was doing charity work. Another commentary, okay. No brokered freight. All right. So, I look at it, there's, unfortunately, like, we've also mentioned on this show numerous times, the real victims of a lot of this stuff are the carriers that are actually hauling the freight, because with fraudulent moves, double brokering and everything else, the truck does still have to pick up somewhere and deliver somewhere. The owner ops and the smaller fleets are the ones who are at a higher exposure rate than most, because, you know, again, they're on the spot market more often than not. They might not have as much direct customer freight as some of the megas and the mid to larger fleets that are out there. I just look at it is, you know, I couldn't imagine like the psychological standpoint of, you know, when you're talking to a broker, air quote, and you've never worked with them before. This is, you know, again, this is why I always look at it is we want to work with the same trucking companies week in and week out, day in and day out in my operation. We like rewarding those individuals with more and more freight, because like we at least have a comfort level with each other. We know each other, we know each other's business. And, you know, I look at, you know, the fact that they're able to go in there and actually steal the identities of some of these like I hate thieves, you guys. I hate thieves. I hate criminals. And then, you know, I look at it is with a lot of what's going on out there. You know, I just don't want to see more and more of the good carriers and the good operators in this industry go out of business because they're taken advantage of in stuff like this. And, you know, there's so much information out there about fraud right now. And, you know, and here's another part of the article, excuse me. You know, many big brokers do include an offsetting clause, which allows them to withhold payments from previous uncontested loads if there's a claim on a subsequent load. In practice, say a broker makes a claim on one load after a carrier has hauled 6 claim-free loads, then withholds payment on the whole lot. That's exactly what happened here recently. Luckily, it was an experience. Okay. Fully 70. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, again, I look at it where as a broker, you know, like if I want drivers to be like, again, I've never driven a truck. All right. Like I always like to say, I come from a family of truck drivers, but I've never driven a truck. As a broker, some of these red flags, like, again, I understand it's always easier to say this, but if it sounds too good to be true, you guys, it is. All right. If it's paying exponentially above market for no reason at all, that is a massive red flag. All right. And, you know, again, I look at it from like a bill of lading perspective or a rate con perspective. I'm not sending over anything that's blank to my carriers. All right. There's always a pickup address. There's always a delivery address. There's a piece count. There's commodities. There's weights. There's everything that's listed on there. Everything is listed out. I think that at times and especially when we're in the market that we're in right now, there's not a lot of opportunities that come about, and you might be sitting for a couple of days, and that desperation factor might start to creep in for you to get out of wherever you've been sitting. Take a couple of minutes, you guys. Again, ask some actual qualifying questions. I do not get offended as a broker if you ask me everything about the load. All right. And then as a broker, I want to make sure that the carriers that I'm booking are who they say they are. You know, again, we go through a multi-channel approach every single load that we book out there to ensure that who we're talking to is who is on the phone, you know. But I look at it is you need to vet your brokers a lot. You need to vet your brokers. I would, if I was a driver, I would protect my business at all costs. All right. I would want to ensure that I was getting paid at all costs. And again, it's like, if you feel like follow the chain of command with the load, right? Like call the place that you picked up at if you feel like you're getting scammed, and, you know, reach out to other people. Don't just take that rep's word for it at that brokerage. Call a different office if they have multiple offices. Call the shipper, call the receiver. Do whatever you got to do to ensure that these people are who they say they are. I just look at it is a lot of this stuff I think is avoidable. I'm not going to say entirely preventable, because there's some very intricate schemes that are now going on out there that haven't been a part of it in the past. But I look at it from this perspective that most brokers, if they can't answer basic questions, drivers, and you guys know what I mean. If they can't answer basic questions, I wouldn't book that load at all. All right. Like I've never had a work-in ever happen. All right. They're either first come, first serve, or by appointment. And if somebody mentions work-in and everything else, they failed on the load or they don't have it. If there's any changes to it, right? Like at all. Like, oh, hey, now I need you to go to this location and it's not within like a geographic region. That would probably be me not wanting to leave the shipper at that point. You know, again, there's just a lot of these little cues that I think we need to start following. And if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And I think that that's the approach that a lot of us need to take, because unfortunately, the smaller fleets are at a very high risk to continue to get messed with, because they just don't have the perceived resources that some of the larger fleets do. And then they're exposed out there in the spot market and everything else. So again, I think, as I always, get those direct customers or those trusted broker relationships and just stick in there. But yeah, fraud's going to happen. And I unfortunately I'm of the mindset that it's going to get worse before it gets better out there. But that is going to be it for today. We didn't get to the third article, but that article was from overdriveonline.com. As always, you guys, if you guys got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank it on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang. Window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the back. Hey, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast.